Donald Trump and the Homeless Woman, the surprising story that changed a city. The city lights of Manhattan flickered like a million tiny stars, but beneath their shimmering glow lay stories untold, stories of ambition, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of power. Tonight, we dive into one such tale, a gripping saga that unfolds in the heart of this bustling metropolis. It's about two unlikely allies, each driven by their own demons, who will challenge everything they thought they knew about success and humanity. But before we get started, if you're intrigued already and want to be the first to uncover more twists and turns in this thrilling journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Let's keep growing our community together as we explore the depths of human potential. The city never sleeps, and on this particular winter night, either did Donald Trump. The billionaire real estate tycoon was behind the wheel of his sleek black limousine, navigating through the bustling streets of Manhattan. Unlike the usual spectacle of his public persona, flanked by bodyguards, surrounded by flashing cameras, and basking in the glow of media attention, tonight, he was alone. No entourage, no phone calls, just the hum of the engine and the weight of his own thoughts pressing down on him. The day had not gone as planned. A crucial negotiation with a potential partner had fallen apart, leaving Trump seething with frustration. His mind raced with scenarios of what could have been done differently, but none of it mattered now. The deal was dead, and all that remained was the bitter taste of failure, a rare occurrence for a man who prided himself on being unbeatable. As he turned onto Fifth Avenue, the bright lights of luxury storefronts gave way to the darker corners of the city, where the less fortunate eked out their existence. It was here, under the flickering glow of a street lamp, that Trump's sharp eyes caught sight of something unusual. In the shadow of an old truck, a young woman sat huddled with a small child, both wrapped in a thin blanket that offered little protection against the biting cold. Their faces were pale, their bodies trembling, yet there was a quiet dignity in the way they clung to each other, as if holding on for dear life. Trump frowned, his expression unreadable. He wasn't moved by pity, quite the opposite, in fact. To him, weakness was a flaw, a sign of failure. "How do people let themselves fall so far?" he muttered under his breath, shaking his head in disdain. Yet, despite his dismissive attitude, his hand instinctively reached for the gearshift, preparing to drive away. But then, something stopped him. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe it was the unfamiliar pang of unease that gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. Whatever the reason, Trump found himself braking to a halt, the limousine idling mere feet away from the makeshift shelter. He stepped out of the car, his expensive leather shoes crunching against the frost-covered pavement. The woman looked up, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of surprise and wariness. She cradled the child closer, as if shielding her from the imposing figure before them. Trump took a step forward, his voice cutting through the chill like a blade. "How long do you plan to live like this?" The question hung in the air, heavy with judgment and condescension. For a moment there was silence. Then, to his astonishment, the woman spoke, not with the meekness he expected, but with a steely resolve that caught him off guard. "What about you?" she shot back, her tone icy. "You're just another person who likes to judge others without understanding their struggles." Trump blinked, taken aback. In all his years of dealing with powerful adversaries, no one had ever dared to speak to him like that. Not outright, not directly. And certainly not someone who appeared to be at rock bottom. He chuckled darkly, a sound devoid of humor. "Clever," he admitted grudgingly. "But I'm not here to argue. If you want help, take it. If not, good luck surviving the rest of the winter." With that, he pulled a business card from his pocket and tossed it onto the ground beside them. "Call me if you're interested in fighting instead of crying." Without waiting for a response, he climbed back into his limousine and drove off, leaving the woman and her daughter staring after him in stunned silence. Little did he know, this chance encounter would set into motion a chain of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about power, compassion, and the human spirit. Chapter 2: The Adversary. The next morning, Clara stood outside the towering glass facade of Trump Tower, her breath visible in the crisp winter air. She hesitated for only a moment before stepping through the revolving doors, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The lobby was bustling with activity, security guards patrolling the perimeter, visitors snapping photos, and employees rushing to and fro. Despite the chaos, there was an undeniable sense of power radiating from every corner of the building, a reminder of the man who ruled this domain with an iron fist. Clara approached the reception desk, where a sharply dressed woman greeted her with a polite smile. "May I help you?" she asked, her tone professional but tinged with curiosity. "I'm here to see Mr. Trump," Clara replied, holding her chin high despite the butterflies in her stomach. "He expects me." The receptionist raised an eyebrow but nodded nonetheless, picking up the phone to confirm the appointment. After a brief exchange, she gestured toward the elevators. "You can go up now. His assistant will meet you on the top floor." As the elevator ascended, Clara felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. What had possessed her to walk into the lion's den? Was it desperation? Pride? Or something else entirely? Whatever the reason, there was no turning back now. When the doors opened, she found herself face to face with another impeccably dressed woman who introduced herself as Ivanka Trump. "Good morning," Ivanka said warmly, extending a hand. "My father mentioned you'd be coming. Follow me." Clara followed her through a maze of corridors until they reached a massive office that seemed more like a throne room than a workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the city skyline, while opulent furnishings and artwork adorned the space. At the center of it all sat Donald Trump, his imposing figure silhouetted against the light streaming in from outside. "Ah, Clara," he said without looking up from the stack of papers on his desk. "Right on time. I appreciate punctuality." Clara forced herself to maintain eye contact as she stepped forward. "Thank you for seeing me," she said evenly, though her voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. Trump finally looked up, his piercing gaze sweeping over her from head to toe. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to one of the chairs opposite him. "Let's get down to business." For the next hour, the two engaged in a tense negotiation that bordered on a verbal sparring match. Trump outlined the terms of their agreement, making it clear that Clara would serve as his personal assistant, a role that required unwavering loyalty and absolute discretion. In return, he promised to use his influence to restore her reputation and secure her family's home, which had been seized during the legal battle that led to her downfall. "You're not getting charity," Trump emphasized, leaning back in his chair. "This is a partnership. You bring your skills to the table, and I'll provide the resources you need to succeed." Clara nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a tightrope. "Understood," she said firmly. "But let me make one thing clear, I don't work for free. If I'm going to do this, it has to be worth my time." Trump chuckled darkly, clearly impressed by her audacity. "I like your style," he admitted grudgingly. "We'll see how long you last." And so, their unlikely alliance began. A world apart. Over the following weeks, Clara quickly adapted to the fast-paced environment of Trump's empire. Her days were filled with endless meetings, phone calls, and deadlines, each one pushing her further out of her comfort zone. Despite the challenges, she thrived in the role, drawing on her background as a lawyer to navigate the complex world of real estate and corporate politics. However, her newfound success came at a cost. The hours were grueling, and the pressure relentless. More than once, she found herself questioning whether she'd made the right choice. But then she remembered Lily, the innocent face of her daughter, and the fire within her burned brighter than ever. One afternoon, as Clara was preparing for yet another meeting, she received an unexpected visitor. A man in a tailored suit entered the office, his presence commanding attention. He introduced himself as Robert, a former colleague of hers from her days as a lawyer. His expression was unreadable as he handed her a folder containing documents related to a case she'd worked on years ago. "These might interest you," he said cryptically before disappearing as quickly as he'd arrived. Confused but intrigued, Clara opened the folder and began reading. To her astonishment, the documents revealed a shocking truth. The corruption scandal that had destroyed her career had been orchestrated by none other than one of Trump's fiercest rivals in the industry. The implications were staggering, and Clara knew she had to act fast. That evening, she confronted Trump in his office, laying the evidence on his desk with a look of triumph. "Looks like we have a common enemy," she said smugly. Trump studied the documents carefully, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. "Interesting," he muttered, tapping his fingers against the desk. "Very interesting indeed." For the first time since their partnership began, Clara saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. "You're good," he admitted begrudgingly. "But don't think this changes anything. We're still competitors at heart." Clara smiled faintly. "Agreed. Now, what's our next move?" "Power plays." With the new information in hand, Trump devised a bold strategy to strike back at his rival. Leveraging his connections in the media and government, he launched a public relations campaign aimed at exposing the corruption within his opponent's organization. Meanwhile, Clara worked tirelessly behind the scenes, gathering additional evidence to bolster their case. The plan worked better than either of them could have anticipated. Within days, headlines across the country were ablaze with accusations of fraud and misconduct, forcing Trump's rival to issue a public apology and promise reforms. For Clara, it was a bittersweet victory. While she relished the chance to reclaim some semblance of justice, she couldn't ignore the moral ambiguity of her actions. After all, she was using the same tactics that had once brought her down. Still, there was no denying the satisfaction of watching her former tormentor squirm. And when Trump announced plans to expand his charitable initiatives, including the construction of affordable housing units for the less fortunate, Clara couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way to balance ambition with compassion. As the weeks turned into months, their working relationship evolved into something resembling friendship, or at least mutual respect. They sparred frequently, challenging each other's assumptions and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And though neither would admit it aloud, both knew they were stronger together than apart. Chapter 3: The Game of Power. The storm hit harder than anyone could have predicted. Overnight, headlines across major news outlets painted Donald Trump as a ruthless billionaire who exploited the most vulnerable members of society for personal gain. Photographs of dilapidated buildings and homeless encampments were splashed across front pages, accompanied by scathing editorials condemning his alleged involvement in profiteering from human suffering. Social media erupted into chaos, with hashtags like #ExposeTrump trending globally. Clara watched the developments unfold from her desk at Trump Tower, her fingers tapping nervously against the keyboard. She had anticipated resistance, but this level of backlash was unprecedented. Even some of Trump's staunchest supporters began questioning his motives, forcing him to take drastic action. "You want me to handle this?" Clara asked cautiously during one of their strategy meetings. Trump, seated behind his massive mahogany desk, exhaled a cloud of cigar smoke before responding. "No," he said firmly. "This is my fight. But you'll assist." And so, the battle lines were drawn. A calculated move. Trump's response came swiftly and decisively. Instead of issuing an apologetic statement or attempting to downplay the accusations, he announced a bold initiative: the construction of Trump Shelter, a state-of-the-art housing complex designed to provide affordable homes for the city's underprivileged population. The project would be funded entirely through private investments, with no taxpayer money involved, effectively neutralizing critics who accused him of exploiting public funds. "This isn't charity," Trump declared during a televised press conference. "It's smart business. By creating jobs and revitalizing neighborhoods, we're investing in the future of our city. And if that makes me a hero, then so be it." Behind the scenes, Clara worked tirelessly to ensure the plan's success. Drawing on her legal expertise, she meticulously reviewed contracts, negotiated deals with contractors, and ensured compliance with local regulations. Her attention to detail proved invaluable, helping to prevent potential pitfalls that could derail the project. But the road ahead was far from smooth. Opponents of the initiative launched a smear campaign, alleging that the development would displace existing residents and exacerbate gentrification issues. Protesters gathered outside Trump Tower, holding placards emblazoned with slogans like "Stop Exploitation" and "Housing for All." Faced with mounting pressure, Trump turned to Clara once again. "What do you suggest?" he asked, his tone betraying a rare hint of uncertainty. Clara hesitated for only a moment before speaking. "We need to change the narrative," she said confidently. "Show them that this isn't just about profit, it's about people. Highlight the stories of those who stand to benefit from the project. Make it personal." Trump nodded slowly, clearly impressed by her insight. "All right," he said. "You're in charge of PR. Do what you must." Turning the tide. Under Clara's guidance, the PR team crafted a series of compelling narratives showcasing the positive impact of the proposed development. They interviewed families living in substandard conditions, sharing their hopes and dreams for a better future. They organized community events where Trump personally met with residents, listening to their concerns and addressing their questions. The strategy worked wonders. Gradually, public opinion began to shift. Critics still voiced their objections, but their voices grew fainter amidst the growing chorus of support. For many, the sight of a billionaire taking concrete steps to address social inequality was nothing short of revolutionary. Yet, beneath the surface, tensions simmered. One evening, as Clara reviewed the latest batch of emails, she stumbled upon a disturbing revelation. Hidden within the documents was evidence linking one of Trump's fiercest rivals to the very corruption scandal that had destroyed her career years earlier. The implications were staggering, and Clara knew she had to act quickly. Summoning all her courage, she confronted Trump in his office late that night. "You won't believe what I found," she said, placing the incriminating papers on his desk. Trump scanned the documents carefully, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "So, they're playing dirty, huh? Well, two can play that game." Together, they devised a counterattack aimed at exposing the truth behind the rivals' schemes. Using a combination of legal maneuvers and strategic leaks to the media, they dismantled the opposition's credibility piece by piece. Within days, the rival was forced to issue a humiliating apology, effectively ending any hope of derailing the Trump shelter project. Lessons learned. As the dust settled, Clara reflected on the events of the past few months. She had entered Trump's world expecting to find a heartless tyrant, yet what she discovered was something far more complex. Beneath the brash exterior lay a man driven by ambition, yes, but also by a desire to leave a lasting legacy. He might not have worn his heart on his sleeve, but his actions spoke louder than words. For his part, Trump couldn't deny the profound impact Clara had on him. Her unwavering determination and moral compass challenged him in ways no one else ever had. Though he would never admit it openly, he respected her deeply, and perhaps even admired her. One afternoon, as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the construction site of Trump's shelter, Trump turned to Clara with a wry smile. "You know," he said, "I used to think the world was black and white. Now I see shades of gray." Clara raised an eyebrow, amused. "And here I thought you'd never learn." Trump chuckled, his laughter carrying over the sound of distant hammering below. "Don't get too comfortable, counselor. There's still plenty of work to do." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city skyline, both knew they had achieved something remarkable, not just for themselves, but for countless others whose lives would be forever changed by their efforts. Chapter 4: The Two-Faced Victory. The grand opening of Trump's shelter was an event that drew attention from all corners of the city and beyond. Journalists, politicians, and curious onlookers gathered outside the newly constructed complex, marveling at its sleek design and innovative layout. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture, blending luxury apartments with affordable housing units in a way that seemed almost too good to be true. Inside, Clara moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, her sharp eyes scanning for any signs of trouble. She had worked tirelessly over the past few months to ensure every detail was perfect, from the landscaping to the interior finishes. Her dedication hadn't gone unnoticed by Trump, who watched her with a mixture of pride and amusement. "You're doing well," he remarked during one of their brief encounters. "But don't let it go to your head. Clara smiled faintly, knowing full well that his words carried more weight than they appeared. For once, she didn't bother to retort. Instead, she focused on guiding guests through the facility, explaining the unique features that made Trump Shelter stand out from other developments. As the day wore on, the atmosphere shifted from excitement to tension. A group of protesters appeared outside the building, holding placards denouncing the project as nothing more than a PR stunt designed to rehabilitate Trump's tarnished image. Their chants echoed through the streets, drawing the attention of passers-by and adding a layer of unease to the proceedings. Trump, ever the showman, seized the opportunity to address the crowd. Stepping onto a makeshift podium, he delivered a speech that was equal parts charisma and bravado. "Some people see this as a business venture," he declared, gesturing toward the gleaming towers behind him. "Others call it charity. But I see it for what it truly is, a testament to human ingenuity and determination." His words were met with mixed reactions. While some applauded enthusiastically, others booed loudly, their skepticism unwavering. Undeterred, Trump pressed on, highlighting the positive impact the development would have on the community. By providing safe, affordable housing for those in need, he argued, they were creating a foundation for long-term prosperity. Behind the scenes, Clara coordinated with security personnel to maintain order and prevent potential conflicts. Her calm demeanor belied the storm brewing within her. Despite her outward composure, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The protest seemed oddly orchestrated, almost too convenient to be genuine. Her suspicions were confirmed later that evening when she received an anonymous tip-off via email. Attached to the message was a document detailing covert operations by one of Trump's rivals, operations aimed at sabotaging the success of Trump's Shelter. The evidence was damning, implicating high-ranking officials and corporate executives in a web of corruption and deceit. Without hesitation, Clara brought the information to Trump. "We need to act fast," she said urgently, laying the papers on his desk. "If this gets out, it could destroy everything we've built." Trump studied the documents carefully, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of grim determination. "Let them try," he said coldly. "We'll crush them before they even get started." Together, they devised a counterattack strategy that combined legal action with strategic media exposure. Leveraging their connections in the press, they released select portions of the evidence to trusted journalists, ensuring the story gained maximum traction. Within hours, headlines across major news outlets exposed the conspiracy, leaving little room for doubt about its authenticity. The fallout was swift and devastating. Several key figures implicated in the scheme resigned or faced criminal charges, effectively dismantling the opposition's influence. Meanwhile, public opinion swung firmly in favor of Trump and Clara, cementing their status as champions of social justice. Reflections in the aftermath. As the dust settled, Clara found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. From the freezing night on Fifth Avenue to the triumphant unveiling of Trump's Shelter, she had traveled a path filled with challenges and surprises. Along the way, she had learned valuable lessons about resilience, adaptability, and the complexities of human nature. For his part, Trump couldn't deny the profound impact Clara had on him. Her unwavering commitment to justice and fairness challenged him in ways no one else ever had. Though he would never admit it openly, he respected her deeply, and perhaps even admired her. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the bustling city below, Trump turned to Clara with a rare moment of vulnerability. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think the world was divided into winners and losers. Now I realize there's more to it than that." Clara raised an eyebrow, amused but touched by his admission. "And here I thought you'd never change." Trump chuckled, his laughter carrying over the sound of distant traffic. "Don't get too comfortable, counselor. There's still plenty of work to do." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the skyline, both knew they had achieved something extraordinary, not just for themselves, but for countless others whose lives would be forever changed by their efforts. Yet, amidst the celebration, there lingered a sense of unease. The victory was bittersweet, born out of compromise and sacrifice. Clara understood that the world was not black and white, nor was it entirely gray. Sometimes it was both, and everything in between. Chapter 5: The Lesson from a Villain. The grand opening of Trump's Shelter had come and gone, leaving behind a legacy that would resonate far beyond its gleaming walls. For Clara, the project marked more than just a professional achievement, it symbolized her personal redemption. From the depths of despair to standing shoulder to shoulder with one of the most powerful men in the world, she had proven to herself that resilience could overcome even the darkest moments. As the weeks turned into months, life at Trump Tower returned to its usual rhythm. Meetings, negotiations, and strategic planning filled their days, but beneath the surface, something had shifted. Both Clara and Trump carried themselves differently, more grounded, perhaps, yet still driven by their respective ambitions. One afternoon, as they sat in Trump's office reviewing financial reports, the conversation naturally drifted toward the events that had brought them together. "Do you ever think about that night on Fifth Avenue?" Trump asked suddenly, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic note of curiosity. Clara paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "All the time," she admitted softly. "It changed everything, for both of us." Trump chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "I suppose it did. Who would have thought a homeless woman and her kid could teach me a thing or two?" Clara smiled faintly, though her expression carried a hint of irony. "And who would have thought a billionaire real estate tycoon could actually care about anything other than profit?" Their banter was light-hearted, but there was an underlying truth to their words. Over the course of their partnership, they had challenged each other's assumptions and forced growth in ways neither had anticipated. Trump, once dismissive of those he deemed weaker, had learned to see value in vulnerability. Clara, once idealistic to a fault, had embraced the harsh realities of the world without losing sight of her principles. Reflections on Power and Compassion. In the months following the completion of Trump's Shelter, the project gained widespread recognition, not just as a triumph of architecture and urban planning, but as a case study in unconventional problem-solving. Academics, journalists, and industry leaders dissected every aspect of the development, analyzing how a seemingly paradoxical combination of self-interest and social responsibility could yield such remarkable results. For Trump, the attention was both gratifying and frustrating. While he relished the accolades, he bristled at attempts to frame him as some sort of modern-day philanthropist. "Charity? No," he famously tweeted. "That's a smart investment." His stance was clear. He didn't do what he did out of altruism. He did it because it made sense. And yet, deep down, he knew there was more to it than that. Clara, meanwhile, found herself reflecting on the journey that had transformed her from a struggling single mother to a key player in one of the most influential organizations in the country. She often thought about Lily, whose bright smile now lit up their new apartment, a stark contrast to the cold nights spent huddled in a truck bed. Though she owed much of her success to Trump, she refused to let gratitude cloud her judgment. He wasn't a hero, nor was he entirely villainous. He was simply complicated. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the city skyline, Clara voiced her thoughts aloud. "You know," she said, "people always expect stories like ours to end with a moral lesson. Good triumphs over evil, light conquers darkness. But this isn't one of those stories, is it?" Trump glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "No," he replied after a moment. "This is a story about survival. About doing whatever it takes to get ahead, even if it means working with someone you'd never imagined possible." Clara nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Maybe that's why it works. Because we're not perfect. We're flawed, selfish, and sometimes ruthless. But we're also capable of change." Her words hung in the air, resonating with a quiet truth that neither could deny. In their own way, they had forged a partnership built on mutual respect, shared goals, and an understanding of the complexities inherent in human nature. A final twist. As the year drew to a close, Clara received an unexpected gift, a small wooden box containing a photograph of Lily holding a toy bear. Attached to the photo was a handwritten note, to Clara, with best wishes for the future. DT. She stared at the gesture for a long moment, her emotions warring within her. It was a simple act, devoid of fanfare or expectation, yet it carried immense weight. For the first time, she saw past the brash exterior to glimpse the man beneath. The man who, despite his flaws, had played a pivotal role in shaping her life. When she next saw Trump, she handed him a framed copy of the same photo, along with a certificate of appreciation from the residents of Trump's shelter. "This is for you," she said evenly. "Because whether you like it or not, you've made a difference." Trump accepted the gift with a rare show of humility, his lips curving into a genuine smile. "Thank you," he said simply. "But remember, one day, I'll make you pay for this sentimentality." They shared a laugh, their bond stronger than ever, forged through trials and triumphs alike. Epilogue: the world moves on. Years later, when historians looked back on the era of Donald Trump, they would debate his legacy endlessly. Was he a visionary leader or a divisive figure? A champion of progress or a purveyor of chaos? One thing, however, remained undeniable: he had left an indelible mark on the world. And somewhere in the annals of history, alongside his towering achievements and controversial decisions, there would be a footnote about a woman named Clara, a woman who dared to challenge him, to question him, and ultimately, to change him. Together, they had rewritten the rules of power, proving that even in a world defined by greed and ambition, there was room for compassion, and maybe even hope. And there you have it, the beginning of an unforgettable odyssey where power meets compassion, and enemies become partners. But wait, what secrets still lie hidden? Who is truly pulling the strings behind the scenes? Stay tuned for the next episode because things are just heating up. Trust me, you won't want to miss a moment of what comes next. Click like if you agree, and remember to ring that notification bell so you never miss out on the drama ahead. Until then, see you soon.